My name's Karl LaRocca. I'm the founder and head of Kayrock Screenprinting here in Brooklyn, New York. Kayrock was founded in 1998. In the beginning, I built out a loft with a bunch of friends of mine on North 3rd in Kent. And so I had a big space. And my friend Bill Kazin found this printmaker who was going out of business. So we got a drying rack and exposure unit and some big crusty wooden screens from him, and set them up in my loft and started printing, both making artist editions and also working for a lot of local bands to make posters for their shows. And we took Kazin and LaRocca and put it together and started saying things were by Kayrock because it sounded kind of stupid because there was like that radio station. And now, 20 years later, people call me Kayrock. We specialize in screen printing because that's the only kind of printmaking we know how to do. So we print both textiles and paper. So most of the paper production we do is fine art editions, both editions that we publish ourselves, and then we work with other institutions like IPCNY, White Columns, Printed Matter, to print editions that they publish. I think we have a great work culture here. We have two, Max and Gabe work full-time on paper production, and then Anna works on making frames and social media, and then helping out in various areas where that's needed. And then Charlotte and Aaron work full-time on textile production, printing things like the IPCNY tote bags that you can see in the store. Political work, working politically has always been an important part of Kayrock Screenprinting. You know, when we started, George Bush was president, and we were doing a lot of political T-shirts back then. And we were doing printing for Downtown for Democracy and working on art editions with artists in a political fundraiser way. 2.5 years ago or so, we got fired back up. And we've been printing a whole bunch of political posters and T-shirts that we sell and then donate the proceeds to various charities that you can decide. You get to actually pick which charity your donation goes to. Something that's kind of fun is we can kind of come up with an idea in the morning from like what's on NPR and actually design a shirt, print a sample, take a photo of it, and put it up on our website, and it can be for sale that day. It's kind of great that silkscreen can be such an immediate process. We've raised, I think, about $30,000 since Trump was inaugurated for Planned Parenthood, Coalition Against Gun Violence, ACLU, and other lefty charities like that. We've published a lot of art editions and gone to art fairs, but a couple of years ago, I think partly because of being at the New York Art Book Fair, we wanted to figure out a way that we could make art editions that would let anybody be a collector, and where the price, you wouldn't have to worry about whether this print was going to appreciate, but you could just like it and want to live with it and own it. So we came up with the idea of this Fresh Print series. And we kind of standardized the size so it'd be very easy for people to frame, and that we could just grid them out on the wall, and kind of limited the number of colors to 5 or 6 colors. And so far, I think we've published about 95 of those prints. This year, we're actually on track to publish one fresh print every week is our goal. So these are all different artists that we invite into the studio, make a new work of art with them. It's not like a copy. And then we just make a larger edition and have come up with ways that we can just sell them directly to collectors. Yeah. My journey with screen printing started back in 1992 at Oberlin College with John Pearson, who was the professor of silkscreen there. And I took his intro screen printing class, and he wound up becoming my advisor. And for some reason, all they had was silkscreen, so that was all the printmaking I did, and that's probably partly why that's the only printmaking I do now. And then, after moving to Brooklyn and starting Kayrock, we started in 184 Kent, and we were there for about 7 years until we lost the lease on that space. And then I moved up to North 12th in Kent, to this really weird space that where it was the Bayside Fuel Oil Company. You actually had to get buzzed in by a security guard and go past these oil drums to get to the studios. We were there for about 2 years, and then I started the Monster Island building with the guys from Secret Project Robot. And so that was back on North 3rd in Kent. And I had the whole second floor of that for Kayrock, and then the ground floor for art galleries and parties and events. And we were in there for about 7 years again, and then we lost that space. We luckily found a space here in this GMDC building, which is a nonprofit that's dedicated to keeping manufacturing in Greenpoint. And we've been here for about 8 years, I think. A neat thing about it is we've always been right on the East River, and we could always see Manhattan and the East River. And I think that water is, I have a strong connection to water and swimming in the ocean, and I've been really lucky that we've been able to be here. Like, it's a lot of fun to be in Greenpoint. It's not, I know the kind of Brooklyn epicenter of art is out in Bushwick now, but I like being here. And every time I get to reset up the studio, it gets a little bit better. And, hopefully we'll be here as long as we're here. The two biggest instructors for me, once I started Kayrock, were making mistakes and figuring out how and why we made a mistake. And then often, how could I make that mistake again on purpose? And then working with artists is so much fun because they come in here and they have all these ideas about their art and their way of making, but they're not necessarily print makers. So you get to kind of figure out how to use all of the techniques that you've learned and then what's in their brain and how can you mash those together to make a print. So kind of like, in a way, every artist who comes in here has the benefit of collaborating with every artist who's come in before them, because every time I work with a new artist, there's a chance to come up with a new technique. I remember really early on making these prints with Matthew Brannon that were gigantic prints that we had to print in 2 or 4 passes, and we had to actually rig up clotheslines all over the studio so we could actually physically hang these prints from clotheslines. Or another time, working on a print with Taylor MacKinnon's, we came up with this technique where he had all these hand-drawn things that then we put into the computer, and we'd done all this work printing layers, but then he wanted to add hand-drawn elements to this giant print, but he wanted to work small. So we could print out small films and then have him actually paint black on the back of the film and scan it, and I could see through enough. What was already printed on the film was slightly lighter gray enough that I could use that to perfectly register his gestures to what we already had and then get rid of it and then scale it up to fit with what we'd already printed.
Use the 5030, right?
Yeah.
Not the 5043.
Yeah, being part of the Brooklyn print community, it's amazing to get to interact with other printmakers, to visit their studios through things like Printmakers Anonymous, where we all get together and we visit each other's studios and share techniques. We only do screen printing here, but it's so much fun to see other printmaking processes. A lot of times if there's a project that isn't feasible for us to do or too busy, we'll share it with other shops and see if there's somebody else who can handle it. Luther at Excel and then BRT and now Powerhouse has been definitely a mentor over the years and very giving with knowledge about interacting with artists and handling fine art prints and techniques for printing. I met Roberta for the first time, I think the first time I exhibited at EAB, and she's always been such a supporter of printmaking. Amazing to have her come over to our studio and look through all the prints and curate into the show. Super excited to be part of this group of printmakers, and so glad that IPCNY is hosting the show and recognizing all of the amazing, young printmaking that's happening in Brooklyn.